Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We are now in poem 335, "'Tis Not the Dying Hurts Us So." Now, this is possibly another theodicy, that is to say a question regarding pain and suffering. In this case, it will be death. It's another comparison poem, which we have seen a number of in our study already of Emily's stuff. And it makes some sense to know the background here. This poem was actually included in a letter, number 278, to the letter, by the way, now lost, to the Norcross cousins at the death of their father on the 7th of January, 1863. Our assumptions here are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments, such as, for example, our Big Five. What does this text say about epistemology, what you can know? We're obviously going to see some of that here. Ontology, who you are, for sure, we will see that. Psychology, the study of the individual mind. Sociology, the study of the collective mind. And then finally, of our Big Five, last, that word I used a few seconds ago, theodicy. This question, why must there be pain and suffering? It is obviously Milton's project to justify the ways of God to men in his classic Paradise Lost. We've given full lectures at LearnStrong.net. In this poem, Emily will grapple with the fact that there are those who die, and then, of course, there are those who remain behind. Now, many have argued, who have studied Emily closely, that she is really at her tenderness when she is writing condolences letters. And in fact, we have a number of these letters, as I just mentioned. The letter 279, for example, which was written to her cousins a week or so later after the death of their father. In the first letter, she asks them this question, quote, "Wasn't dear Papa so tired always after Mama went? And wasn't it almost sweet to think of the two together these winter nights? The grief is our side, darlings, and the glad is theirs." She apologizes to Vinny for attending the funeral for Vinny not attending the funeral by saying, quote, "Vinny intended to go, but the day was cold and she wanted to keep Uncle luring," the father, "as she talked with him always instead of this new way." And then Emily will end the letter with the words which lead into this poem. "Good night. Let Emily sing for you because she cannot pray." Much has been made of that last line and the skepticism that would be a kind of continual part of Emily's questions about what happens after death. Now, of course, this really is the question, as well as the question, how do we live with death? By the way, note the word picture here of death being behind a door, and note the word picture of birds departing for the winter, and she will say in a classic line, "We are the birds that stay." It's one of the more amazing lines in all of Emily. Let's enjoy the poem. "'Tis not that dying hurts us so, 'tis living hurts us more, but dying is a different way, a kind behind the door, the southern custom of the bird that ere the frosts are due accepts a better latitude. We are the birds that stay, the shiverers round farmers' doors, for whose reluctant crumb we stipulate till pitying snows persuade our feathers home." I'm always amazed at the way that Emily's poems, in this tenor especially, can give some people tremendous comfort and other people a certain noted kind of ironic skepticism about the whole notion of the afterlife. We'll see, hopefully, both here. Notice she begins with a remarkable comparison that, in fact, it isn't that dying hurts us as much as it is we have to go on living. That is to say, the individual who dies and moves on. It's the rest of us. It is we, the living, that have to figure out exactly what it is that happens next. We think, obviously, of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, don't we? Right? But, she'll say, dying is a different way a kind behind the door. Can we just point out the remarkable use of the word kind? That is to say, kind can mean a type, but it can also mean to be kind, as in not cruel. And of course, we'll get to pitying a little bit later with this notion of kindness. Then from this word picture, and by the way, you'll remember in poem 49, the door of God, right? The kind behind the door, death standing behind the door and all of that. And then she goes to birds. And of course, birds that are fleeing for the winter to a warmer clime. Notice she'll say, southern custom, but notice S and C capitalized, of the bird that ere the frosts are due. We'll see this frost in poem 337 with such a practiced frost. And we saw it already in poem 332, that ere the frosts are due, accepts, and I think that's the key word maybe of this poem, a better latitude. Now, is she talking about afterlife here? Some will say yes. We, and then she'll finally say it. Notice it's not I, it's we. As she's speaking to her cousins, of course, are the birds that stay. Now, this is an amazing line. I mean, it makes us think of Thomas Hardy's Darkling Thrush. We've given a full lecture on it at learnstrong.net. The birds that don't go. The birds that are, what are we going to say, too idiotic to get out of town when it's so cold and nasty and the frost is about to do its frost thing. No, we stay. In other words, we stick around. And we are what? Shivers. Now, it's the only time she uses this word. It's quite a remark. Trembling, right? We're trembling. Shivers round farmers' doors. That, by the way, notice farmers here is maybe a stand-in for God, for whose reluctant crumb, we're back to the crumb of 328, we stipulate. In other words, all we get, we're starving birds because we weren't smart enough to, fly south for the winter. So we all long for something to eat, but all we ever really get is this single crumb, right? Crumbs from the table, of course, come to mind, and that famous referencing, of course, even to a story by Jesus Christ. We stipulate here, that is, we long for it, right? And notice the use of this we here will take us to T.S. Eliot's "We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Those who have crossed with direct eyes to death's other kingdom, remember us, if at all, not as lost violent souls, but only as the hollow men, the stuffed men." We've given full lectures on this at learnstrong.net. Remember, our point in that comment is that we don't actually fear dying. What we fear is having to someday meet those on the other side. And that for us is disconsolate. What are we going to do? What are we going to say? We stipulate till pitying snows. Now, it's only Emily who can make us think about snows as somehow being pitying. We think of snows as being harsh. Of course, we're back obviously to the game that she's playing here in terms of when we finally die. It is in fact a pity of the farmer of God. Pitying snows persuade our feathers home. I mean, what an amazing way for her to say, we're the birds that stay, but we're not happy about it. I mean, we're the ones that are stuck having to deal with the fact that the ones we love leaves us. And in that regards, I think at 2a, that's our point. That the world is divided into the southerners and the shiverers, that is to say, the believers and the unbelievers. And obviously it is incredibly difficult for us to lose the ones that we love. At 2b, well, obviously the word pictures of death behind the door and birds departing or not departing for winter. We are the birds that stay, a compelling line. At 3a, I mentioned T.S. Eliot's Hollow Men. Think about Donne's Holy Sonnet 10, Death Be Not Proud, as being kind of a counterbalance to this poem. Finally, at 3b, how do you deal with the idea of death, and especially the death of a pal, and to what degree are you a shiverer? I hope Emily's challenging you. Thank you.